Hello, welcome here. So today I'm going to be talking about the tools that I recommend that you have set up as a virtual assistant. In order to have a functioning, smooth, efficient business, there are certain tech tools that are needed, and a lot of times it's really hard to figure that out in the early stages of your business, and I'm here to help you out with that. For those of you new to my community, my name is Shanae. I'm an online business mentor for virtual assistants, and I'm helping you build the business of your dreams. So the first tool that I recommend is Calendly, a calendar link of some sort. As a OBM, I specialize in Dubsado and Honeybook. Those are CRMs. I dive more into that in other videos, but these CRMs have calendar link capabilities as well built in. So if you are using a CRM, you can use the calendar link with this. It's all the same thing. However, if you're newer as a virtual assistant or in the online space, starting out with Calendly, I even still use Calendly as a separate link today in my business, only because I just like having it separate. So there are slight variations between what's available in Dubsado versus what Calendly can do for me, but it's ever so slightly. It really doesn't matter. That's just me being picky and just having a preference. I just recommend Calendly to start out with. It's really easy to get set up, and it's a functional tool to have. It's something it's essential to have in your business to be able to give your potential clients an opportunity to book a call with you without having a ton of back and forth on emails. We're trying to avoid extra talking, extra communication that's just unneeded. So if you have this calendar link, you can have this in your social media bios, you can have this on your signature in your email. There's multiple places where you can store this link so that it's just easy for somebody to book the call with you, and that can be your call to action, at least in the starting stages of your business, where you can just send somebody and be like, hey, book a call with me if you're ready to get organized in your business, or whatever the case is, right? So the second thing is you need to have some kind of video call platform. So I know that sounds really scary, but all that is basically Zoom, or some people will use Google Meet. I don't love Google Meet. It's just not at the same level as Zoom. And you know what? At this point, Zoom is free. They've just done a way better job in their back end with their processing system and how Zoom operates, how clear the video is, and just how everything functions, that it's kind of a no-brainer. But Google Meet with the Google Workspace system, I understand why people like to just stay within one system. While I support that 100%, it's not my favorite platform. It glitches out a lot. The links break all the time. It's just not great. I don't recommend it. So you do have those two options. There are other ones, but those are the two that I usually recommend the most to my clients. I will keep in mind, though, with Zoom, it's free with one-on-one unlimited, so like yourself and your client. However, if you do have multiple, so say there's a third person, so a scenario that happened with me was I had the free version for majority of my business, like starting out. I only recently, in the last maybe 6 months, I bought the upgraded, but for the most part, you can get away with the free one for a long time. But what happened with me was I only had the free version. I was on a call. I used my platform, like my version of it, to set up the call with a client, and it was the client with her OBM that were on the call, and they're in two separate places in the world. So now that's two different people. Now it's three of us in this call. The thing that happens is after 45 minutes, the call cuts off. So you are only able to have up to 45 minutes with more than two people on the free version. If this is a regular thing for you, you have clients that are like hopping on, you're having multiple people on the call regularly, I highly recommend you getting the upgraded version, or just informing them that you can only keep the call to 45 minutes. Most of the client calls, once you start working with the client, are not longer than half an hour. It's usually just an update. It's some kind of like connect call, just like seeing what the next phases of the project, or where are you at, giving them an update, getting direction from them, that kind of stuff. But most of the time it doesn't last longer than 45 minutes. So you should be fine. But I just wanted to give you that heads up if you weren't aware. The next one that you want to make sure that you have set up is a payment processor. So again, through Dubsado or through Honeybook, you're able to link a payment processor, but the payment processor is Stripe, Square. Oh man, there's so many of them, but those are the two that I would recommend the most. PayPal, just stay away from it. Don't go near it. Everybody kind of gravitates towards PayPal initially when they're first starting out because they're like, it's kind of the default easy option. And a lot of platforms connect to PayPal, but the horror stories behind it and the things that I've seen and the things that I've dealt with personally, it's just not worth it. It's not worth the headache. Try to go for a payment processor that has the lowest rate that they take. So I'm pretty sure Stripe, and I think they've recently updated, but for a while it was at like 2.5%. So it wasn't terrible. The payment processor, because they are bridging the gap between the client paying you and like you getting your money. So they're providing a service, so they take a cut of that amount that the client paid you because it's a convenience for the client to be able to pay you through credit card. That's pretty much all that the payment processor is there for, so that you can have an invoice set up. They can click a button, they can put their credit card information in, and you get paid. What happens is that the money goes into the account of Stripe, for example, and then it gets processed usually between 3 to 5 business days, and your bank account is attached to the Stripe in the back end, and then they just put the funds into your account as a direct deposit. Another way to do it is, at least like I'm in Canada, so the way that we do it is with an Interact e-transfer. But I know for like the States, a lot of times it's just a bank transfer. That's usually a better option if you can set that up with your clients, because then no one's paying extra fees. So the other thing to think about, if you are using a payment processor and they're paying with a credit card, you can also tack on an extra, say like 10%, or you can say if you are paying with credit card, then we have to add an extra $250 or something to the invoice, whatever the amount is that you want to come up with to cover that cost. Because then what's happening is you're not getting the total amount that you got paid, right? Because the payment processor took a piece of that. These are just little things just to think about with your payment processor. At the end of the day, it's not the end of the world, but it does add up over time. So if your client is notorious for paying through credit card because it's a convenience thing for them, and ultimately that's all that it is, right? You want to make it as smooth for them to pay you as possible. Even if you include that in your price, you don't even have to tell them that this fee is in there. It's just included. You've accounted for it within your hourly rate. You can also have it as an administrative fee that's on the invoice as a separate line, basically saying like you have an administrative fee of $5 for every invoice, and then at least you know that you're covering your butt anytime. Like, it doesn't matter if the person paid through a e-transfer or a bank transfer or a credit card, you are covering yourself for that. So those are just my recommendations. Do what it is that you want to do with that, but definitely need to have a payment processor of some sort, looking for specifically low processing fees, and that it easily integrates with other platforms, because that is the biggest headache. If you're going to have a CRM like Dubsado or Honeybook, they only have specific ones that use Stripe and PayPal. And I think Honeybook has Square as well. So those are why I mentioned Square and Stripe versus anything else available right now. You want to make sure that it can connect to other platforms. Keep that in mind. Again, avoid PayPal. It's like one of the highest processing fees. Don't do it. Okay, so the next one is invoice method. So this one, there's 2 different avenues you can go with it. So if you have your Stripe account or your Square account, we're just going to use Stripe for now for this example. So you've got your Stripe account set up. Now, through Stripe, you can actually create an invoice. You can set up your packages or your services on there. You can set up clients. It's actually quite involved. It's a pretty nice platform to use, and it's pretty easy to get your account set up. You just basically copy the invoice link to your client, and so you would send that in your email to the client saying, here's the latest invoice, whatever you want to say in your email. And I usually just say, like, please see the latest email. You can pay me through, like, by clicking on the button below or through e-transfer. And then in your terms and conditions on your contract, which we're going to get into, would state when that payment is due. You can also have that on your actual invoice too. So if you are on a monthly retainer, for example, then you would expect that payment right away, or by a specific, like by the first of the month kind of thing, so that there's no delay of you getting started on the next month. If you are on an hourly client and you get paid at the end of the month, then you basically would say the amount's due upon receipt, and you don't start working the next month until you get that payment. Basically, that's just ways to protect yourself and to not just work for free. Again, there's another video on that side of it too, like just how to navigate those kinds of situations. But the biggest thing is just making sure that you are getting your payment before you start working. The downside of setting up your invoicing and doing it through Stripe is it gets really difficult to track the invoices after you sent them. So something that I love about Dubsado and about Honeybook specifically, I'm going to talk about Dubsado because that's my thing. So Dubsado kind of acts as the collector of your invoice. So you're able to set up what's called a workflow, and you can basically set up a sequence that happens. So it's a very like versions of an email that gets sent out. You set up these emails, but basically you send out the invoice and then say 2 days after the invoice, if it still hasn't been paid yet, then another email gets sent out just saying, like, hey, your payment's late, it's due on this date for this amount, like you can pay it below. Then I'd say 5 days after you sent the actual invoice, then it would send it again and saying, like, hey, you're 5 days late, here's the like information. It's kind of the same little blurb as the 2 days one, but it's kind of like you can set it up so that it's just sort of a reminder to them saying, like, hey, you're late on your payment, like here's the invoice link and go ahead and pay it now. What it does though is it's helping you to not have to think about, like, have I gotten paid yet? Where's my money and whatever. And also you don't have to directly go to your client asking them for the money, because I know that's really difficult for a lot of people, that money mindset, and especially trying to get paid for your own services. We kind of convince ourselves that it's okay if you want to trust the client and, like, they're going to pay you when they're going to pay you. I've gotten screwed over multiple times where I did not get paid. It didn't matter how much I went after the person. They just refused. They basically just ghosted me. Or in different situations, I just gave them their money back and I was like, I can't work with you. See you later. Have a good life. There's some weird folk out there. So it happens. It's normal. It's not a big deal. It's just how you handle that situation and how do you bounce back from it, and like, what do you do moving forward? So bottom line is, have a way to track your invoice. So if you are going to use Stripe, then I would suggest you have another platform that you can be saying, like, okay, I sent it out on this date, I'm going to follow up with them myself at this time, make sure, see if I've gotten my invoice yet. Or you could also set up canned emails through Gmail even, and then you can schedule them out to go certain dates, and that could be your way of following up with them. There's definitely tons of different ways to do it. I don't want to overwhelm you with that. I just wanted to give you that perspective that having something like a CRM or something like an all-in-one tool like Dubsado just helps you to track. You can physically see on the dashboard of your Dubsado if you've gotten paid or not. You get a notification that the client has paid, it turns green, and it's magical. So there's just things like that. There's like the Dubsado side of it just takes it to the next level. It also connects to your QuickBooks so that you're able to do all your invoicing through Dubsado instead of Stripe. So Stripe's in the back end of the way that you're getting the money, but then your invoicing happens inside of Dubsado, and then it connects to your QuickBooks so that your every invoice adds a new line into your QuickBooks for a income line. So all of that stuff is happening on its own without you, like you set it all up, but then you're not having to track all that yourself, and you're not going to physically do that every single month. Your focus is just, you've helped the client, you're giving them an invoice, you're getting paid, everyone's happy. That's where having a system like that is just so helpful, to just take a lot of the pressure off of you as the business owner and as the service provider. And then you can just provide that excellent customer experience and journey for your client, right? Now, the next thing would be a digital agreement. I refer to it as a digital agreement because a contract would need to be authorized by a lawyer or a notary or somebody with authority. Okay. An agreement is two parties that are agreeing to the terms and conditions of that document. Both parties are signing that document and dating it, and both parties are agreeing to follow those terms and conditions, right? The general gist of it is you want to have an agreement laying out how you're getting paid, what the expectations are. You want to lay out what your expectations of the client are. So, for example, communication for me is a huge thing, and I expect that the client is going to be available at least within a reasonable time frame. I'm not expecting an email an hour after I've messaged them, but they need to be in contact with me within like 48 hours to keep things moving along. Otherwise, everything just sits stagnant and stalled and nothing progresses. And then it makes it really difficult for me to like plan my time and plan my days because everything's delayed now because I'm waiting for the client. So things like that. It's just being very, very crystal clear on like what your expectations are as a business owner for the client, but also what it is that they are needing as well. What can they expect from you? What are you going to deliver? How are you going to bring their whatever it is to life? Have a way that you can protect yourself and protect your client, and everybody is taken care of. And in that, make sure that you are saying what your payment expectations are. So how they can pay you. Are you getting paid on time, like upon receipt? Are they on a 30-day kind of contract thing where like you give the invoice and you have 30 days to pay? I don't recommend doing that as a virtual assistant. There are people that still do that. So that is completely up to you, how comfortable you are with that client and how much you like trust that client. If they are a family friend or somebody who is good for it, then go for it. But if it's a new client to you and it's a new person, it's a new business, I would steer away from that. Try to get paid upfront all the time if you can. And if not, at least 50% of the amount. So if you're on an hourly contract, then try to get some kind of money up front to guarantee, or just say the invoice is due upon receipt and we can't do any more work until you get that invoice. The other thing with the agreement is you want to make sure that there's a signature spot for both. So this needs to be a digital agreement. This can't be just mocked up on Canva or on a Google document. It needs to be a formal document that both people can have a digital signature with a date on it. There are so many different ways now for you to be able to create a document, even if it is done on Canva or as a PDF, but sending it through DocuSign or HelloSign. There are other options too. You don't have to go through Dubsado, but having something that's like a DocuSign or a HelloSign is what is going to set you apart. It's what is going to protect you because you've got that signature, the digital signature from them, and it's a viable legal document now. Expecting your client to print it off and sign it and send it back to you is way too many steps for them, and that's just unacceptable in my opinion at this point in technology and like the way that the world is functioning. There are too many options. If you're working in the virtual world and online space, then you need to level up how you are handling these situations and start learning certain platforms like Dubsado or like DocuSign or HelloSign. And if your client is new to that platform, then just being able to explain to them, hey, just click on the link, open the document, sign it, and then I'll get it back right away. That kind of stuff. So there's a little bit of learning that needs to happen and educating yourself and educating your client. But overall, it's just not okay. If you're gonna type up a document on Word document and then send it to them and then get them to print it out, and just think of how many what errors can happen here. Plus you want to deal with confidentiality too. Now you're sending it back and forth through email. I don't know, but anyway, that's just my opinion on it, my 2 cents on that. So just make sure that you're covering yourself in your contract, you're covering your payment agreements, and then also having a spot where both parties can sign, and you do not sign it until your client signs it first. That's the big one as well, because oftentimes you'll sign it and be like, I'm just being efficient and I'm sending it over, and then for them to sign it. But then what happens is they'll forget to sign it or they'll just get busy. They don't intend to do this, but it happens all the time. So make sure that they are signing that contract. They may not take it as seriously as you, but this is a binding agreement between the two parties, and this will protect you if something happens. And it's a point of referral as well, that if something does go wrong, then you can be like, okay, well, in my contract, this is where it states this, da 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 da, right? So making sure that they sign it first, and then you're good. Okay, so the last one that I want to talk about is password management. So making sure that you have some way of sharing documents, sharing passwords, links, anything specific that's very credit card details. It really depends on what it is that you're doing for your client and how much personal information you're getting from them. I know some people are kind of more of a PA, or an executive assistant, and so they'll have a lot more access to personal details from their client. If you're filling out forms for a client, for example, there's a lot of personal information that's required to fill out these forms, like a date of birth, or sometimes you need their driver's license to get all this information. You've got their home address, you've got their date of birth, you've got a lot of personal information. Some people need their SIN information depending on what it is, if they're doing banking stuff. There can be a lot of confidential information that you're dealing with. So having some way to protect that in a password manager like LastPass or BitWarden, I recommend LastPass just to get started. It's easy to get set up. I transferred my stuff over to BitWarden for personally, but I still use LastPass for my client work. Again, it's just a preference thing. So just educating them a little bit of how can they share their passwords, because a lot of them won't have a password thing set up where they're creating all these fancy passwords that are secure. They have a system of writing down their password in a notebook or on their phone or on Google Keep, for example, but that's not being secure and that's not protecting yourself if there were to be a breach of their information, because you're working within their platforms and within their stuff. So if there was to be a hack or something that happens, then again, going back to that agreement, that there needs to be something in your agreement that says you're not responsible for if there was a hack or something that happened with working with their stuff, because you're working within confidential information. You're working as them, basically. So there is always running the risk that something could happen, but it's just protecting yourself. And how are you going to deal with that? And how are you protecting yourself? And what kind of business insurance do you have to cover yourself against anything that were to happen, right? So LastPass and BitWarden are pretty much my go-tos for that. At the end of the day, you just need a way that they can securely send you a password. All that they're required to have in the password when they set it up is an active link for the thing. So say they need your social media manager, you're helping them with social media support, and you need access to their Facebook or their Instagram, then that Facebook link needs to be valid. And then they'll fill out the login information and the password, but then when they share it to you, then they can say hide password. So then on your end, all you see is the link and then the username, and then the password is just kind of grayed out, essentially. And then you'll open it up on your side and accept it, and then you just go launch, and then it'll open it up as if you're them. basically. So that's the easiest way to do it. Sometimes there's glitches with everything. It's technology, stuff happens. So if that happens, there's sometimes a little bit back and forth. Most of the time it's user error. So it might be the actual link that's not functional. And I'm talking about this link specifically because there's many times where like you'll just put like facebook.com, but like there's additional dashes or there's like an additional thing that's on there. So like it has to be the true Facebook, like go directly from that Facebook page and copy the URL that's in the bar and paste it into the LastPass. Like that's what I'm talking about. Don't just manually type it in. It'll just save a lot of headaches and it'll help you to be able to just efficiently launch it and there's no issues. So there have been situations even with me and my own clients where the password, the link is just not working and the client really is just frustrated with the tech stuff and they just like want nothing to do with it. So they will basically give me their password and their username in two separate formats. So like they'll send the username through email and then they'll send like the password through like Facebook Messenger or something, whatever. So it's like it's separate. No one would know that they link. But I don't recommend doing that if you don't have to. Like that's just really like the last ditch effort, and that's a agreement that you have with your client and that trust that happens between the client and yourself. But ultimately you want to have some kind of like password manager that just helps to protect everybody's with their confidentiality. And then that's something that you can speak on as well, with just that confidentiality is a value for you and like you respect that and you know how to handle confidential information, and that you're set up with a password manager that you can help like make that happen. So you can confidently help them and securely help them without knowing all their details, right? So that's pretty much it for that. All of the information that I've talked about within this video is going to be in the description below. The links to the platforms I've mentioned are also going to be in there as well. The thing I just want to kind of close off with is just to think about like the more systems that you have, the more headaches come up, the more tech issues come up, the more maintenance happens, the more updates that need to happen. So it kind of just creates a lot of like busy work that like just things that routine maintenance things that need to happen that wouldn't really happen if you were just on like one system and like one platform, something like Dubsado, for example. So I just want you to be aware of that. You can kind of get the shiny object syndrome when it comes to certain systems and certain things, because you'll see some people using it and then you're like, hey, I want to try it out. By all means, try out the systems. Like, I don't want you to feel like you can't go and trial something for 2 weeks or whatever and see if you like it. If you don't, just drop it. But all I'm saying is just be aware that the more systems that you have to somehow link them together eventually, or they have to somehow work together. So early on, just try to be mindful of what is the purpose of this platform and how is it all working together for the bigger scheme of your business, and like what's the ultimate goal here, what are you trying to achieve. Just kind of keep that running in the back of your mind when you are getting a new system. That being said, systems, certain things cost money, and I totally understand that. I've been there. It's all good. There's a lot of free versions of everything, and you can go a long way with having the free version. You may never have to upgrade to the full version, but it just depends. At some point, that's when you have to make that decision in your business. You want to take your business to the next level, you want to do X, Y, and Z, then sometimes the upgraded version is necessary to get you to that next step in your business. But for the most part, if you're just starting out and you're just trying to organize yourself and trying to like figure it out as you go, then do the free versions as much as you can. And then just kind of know when it's time to sort of upgrade and know that there's other options that are like a little bit more condensed and like all in one, that you can just move everything over and then everything's in one platform versus you having to go multiple different places, have your 10 tabs open, and then away you go. So another thing too is sometimes when they do have to speak together, you're going to need another platform like Zapier, which is going to help with automation. Early on in your business, you don't really have to worry about too much about automation. It's easy to be like, I want my business to run automatic. I want my business to like do all the things, but there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in the background of the business and the operations of the business. Decisions need to be made. There's just certain things that have to be really solidified before you can have like a fully like functional automated business. And also I don't recommend you having a fully automated business, because then there you lose track of a lot of stuff and things can go sideways really quick. So be hands-on, at least in the early stages. I'd say for the first like 3 to 5 years ish. It really depends on your progression with your business, but try to be as hands-on as you can. Slowly build up your team. Get there with time. Don't be in a hurry to get to the automation or to have this huge scale to this big team, and then there's parts of your business that just are not there yet, and then it doesn't work. So it just causes a lot of frustration. A lot of the self-doubt comes up that like you're not good enough to have this business and whatever, and it's all because it just went a little bit too fast than what it should have been. So I just don't want you to like go down that road, but just something to think about. And also another thing with having more tools is like potentially spending more money. So at some point, if you are slowly upgrading the systems to go to that like that next level, but then now you're spending, say, $40 here per month, and then okay, now I'm spending like annually. I recommend spending annually where you can, so you don't have this like monthly amount, but then just making sure that you're putting aside money for it, like from your business, so that you can cover the costs for the next year. Anyway, some people prefer monthly, but annually you just get a lot of like extra discounts and perks, so something to think about. But things can start adding up real quick if you start upgrading each individual platform. And when you can go to something like Dubsado, for example, where it has everything in there and you're paying one fee of $400 versus like $400 here, $40 there, $200 there, and like you can see how quickly it adds up. So those are all just little nuggets of information, tidbits. You can take it with a grain of salt if you want, but I'm here to help you navigate this, because this is a lot of trial and error on my part, so that you don't have to struggle as much as I did. And there's just not a lot of support in the online space. There's just a lot of fluff, and it's very frustrating when you're trying to run a business and you have no idea what to do. So that's the goal of what I'm doing in this channel. It's the goal of what I'm doing with my business. I really just want to help you as much as I can and give you as much value as I can, because it's really hard, and I'm here to support you as much as I can. So if you like this video and if this resonates with you, just go ahead and like it, subscribe to my channel. I put out videos each week to help you move that needle forward in your business. And I go over anything business tips, mom life, everything in between. Like I said, all the information that I talked about in this video today is going to be in the description below, all the links, everything. If you have any questions, make sure that you comment below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also, if you have any other topics or any other thing that you are struggling with, or you just want to know more about and you want me to talk on it and, get it out there, then let me know in the comments below what's another topic that you'd like me to cover, and I'll see how I can help you with that. So until next time, I'll see you soon.